So I'm speaking with one of the most prominent on the rise composing, or one of the composing duo, part of the duo in the industry here, with Andy Grush, known with his partner Taylor Newton Stewart as the Newton Brothers. The duo have brought their unique sound and approach to the films they compose for. Including Oculus, The Life of Crime, and Detachment, among many others. They are reteaming with Oculus director Mike Flanagan for Universal's sequel, Ouija, Origin of Evil, which is getting some amazing reviews. Andy, thank you so much for coming and speaking tonight. I know Taylor was supposed to be here, but you guys had a little bit of emergency. But we will move on.
That's awesome. Thanks for having us, Kaya. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So to get started, I would like to maybe go back to, I guess, your guys' origins and how this whole this formation came together. Because you guys are the Newton brothers, but are you biological brothers or no?
We are not biological brothers. No, we actually there's actually not even a relation to our writing name. Isn't even related to Taylor's middle name, really. It just sort of worked out that we were looking for a writing name to write under, and we wanted something that wasn't too raw and edgy, and something that wasn't too dull and boring. So we're both big fans of Sir Isaac Newton randomly, so that came up in a conversation in a list of about 10 names we circled. So we kind of ended up on the Newton brothers. So I know that's a really boring story, but that's the truth, unfortunately.
Well, that's awesome. I love it. So maybe talking about you specifically, and maybe you can fill in for Taylor a little bit, but what were you guys' kind of musical paths individually, and when did you guys, were you both pursuing film composition? Did it kind of appear kind of out of the universe into your world, and when did you guys cross paths and decide to kind of form this partnership?
We both had sort of a similar upbringing in that we were both around music all the time. I got into music at a young age. My uncle was a session keyboard player in Los Angeles, and he got me into piano when I was like 4, and I started piano lessons and got into recitals and classical music. Taylor's mom grew up with his mom, and his mom was involved in lots of opera. She's an amazing opera singer and was very involved in opera. So he grew up around a lot of that. The two of us came together in the early 2000s, maybe around 2004. He and I met through mutual friends, and we started working together actually on an album that Taylor was writing. And we got along well. We had similar sort of writing techniques, and we enjoyed the same music. So we started working together, spent a lot of time in the studio together, and then I had worked on a film with a few other composers called Mothman Prophecies prior to that.
Right.
And we were looking to work on some more music and get into more film. Taylor and I just decided to start writing together. So we kind of fell into it and decided, let's try this, and we did, and it all has worked out really well. It was a fun little story that's worked out really well. We've been together now for more than 10 years, I think, and it's great to have a writing partner, someone to throw things off of and have them say, hey man, that sucks, or that's great. Like, you shouldn't be afraid to play that for the director,
Right. And I'm always fascinated with kind of these partnerships, and not even outside of music. Like, I love reading about Penn and Teller, or Adam and Jamie from Mythbusters, and a lot of them, they talk about their relationship as they either see it as very just mutually as a professional one. Are you guys more kind of like friends that are also composers, or just creative partners, or how do you kind of label the partnership? Do you hang out on the weekends and go fishing and stuff like that, or is it mainly like we meet at the studio and kind of live our lives otherwise elsewhere?
That's funny. That's a great question. We're friends, and we're also composers. It's funny because Taylor and I sort of have an inside joke about getting massages and getting manicures and pedicures. Because we never, I'm sure from other composers, we have no downtime really. It's
right.
Almost a matter of, hey, how much did you sleep last night? Like, oh, I slept 2 hours. Oh, I got 3 hours. Ha ha ha. So we actually don't hang out a lot, but not because we don't want to. It's only because we just don't have time. We
Right.
We talk about surfing together a lot, but it usually ends up that one of us has to be working almost all the time. And it kind of comes up with directors and producers. They kind of laugh and will say, well, it's great that we have you guys on board because you guys are like 24 hours. Because I've become more of a morning person and Taylor's more of a night person. So at any hour of the day, you can usually catch one of us to change the oboe solo if you need to.
Well,
which is good. It's a blessing and a curse, obviously.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting to hear that because I know some co-composing partnerships. I mean, how do you guys work? Are you guys, I guess more metaphorically, like, are you like puzzle pieces, kind of filling in the gaps? You know, one person has this strength and this person has this strength, or you do this and they do that, or is it more kind of like a synthesis of where you're both kind of just working on the same things together?
We both do essentially the same things. Taylor has some more strength on the electronic side, and I spent a little more time on the classical side growing up. But that doesn't really. We always joke at the end of the day because I might be stuck in a certain counterpoint rule that I'm stuck on and not breaking, and he'll come in and say, like, well, it sounds like crap, like, let's just do this, and it works, and vice versa. Like, he might be into, a certain, synth patch, and I'll say, well, let's just use this preset I found, it works great, and he'll be like, oh, presets, no, but so it's funny that those two things kind of balance themselves out. And then we usually, it's real nice because every time we start a project, we try to tell each other as little as possible about what we're going to tackle for the first round of themes. And it works out really nicely because then we're able to vet those themes with each other before we even sit down and do a playback session with the director or the producers. And it gives us sort of a buffer to try a lot of things, which we love doing. We love pushing it. We love having a playback session where there's at least one thing that they like, but there's at least a few things that they're like, that's insane. Why would you ever play that for us? Because we think it's important to kind of try that because it's easy to, it's easy to mimic, like, hey, we want Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Okay, well, here it is with different instruments. It's fun to play with that and turn it on its head a little bit and then see what you can come up with. And that's always the most stressful, but also the most rewarding at the end of the day, part of the process.
Right, absolutely. And I also want to talk about Mike Flanagan, who was one of your most prized collaborators here as a director. You guys clicked with him on Oculus, and in such a short period of time. I mean, I think Ouija is your fourth feature with him, and I think you're currently working on another one with him. Is that the project that you guys are working on now?
We are. That's exactly right. Yeah, we're working on. He's off shooting Gerald's game, and we read the script a couple weeks ago, and have been sort of crafting themes around that script. And he's just been a great person to work with, and he's an amazing musician on his own. Even to the point where he's able to, we could play a theme and he'll walk over to the piano in our studio and just sit down and go, okay, I hear that you're doing this. What if we go to this chord here for this change when she grabs her arm? It's like, wow, that's amazing. We've been really lucky to have the opportunity to work with him on things like that because it's rare that happens. And it's not necessary in any way. We're not, composers are able to sort of speak the language and try to decipher what a director is getting at. But it is really nice when he'll say, like, oh, you went to A flat here. What if we go to F minor? It's like, wow, that's awesome. Okay, great. Let's do that.
Well, that's
so that's been really great. And
because what I normally hear from composers, and this is completely contrary, is usually when a director is a musician, composers usually hate it because they are more critical and they can't get away with things as much. But it seems like you guys almost have like a third member of the band almost.
It is. It's really nice. And the other nice part about it is that Mike really encourages us to fall on our face in a good way, which goes back to the last point I was talking about in trying things that take it too far. Right. He's really open to that. We'll play things that we're not necessarily really about. We might be excited about it personally, like if we were making an album, but in the case of a film, it's you have to kind of divorce yourself from the idea of that you're writing an album because you're not. You're just writing for the film. Mike's always very encouraging to, hey, play me a couple ideas, and we'll play him something that's completely in the wrong direction, but something that he'll say, you know what, I really hate that, but you know what that brings up is what if we explore something that you did there, and that's always a nice talking point and a good place to be, as opposed to just, great, you recreated the Bach fugue that I wanted, So it's nice to have that dialogue with him, and also know that he's okay to let us hang ourselves a little bit at the front.
Wow, it sounds like a great creative process. I mean, it just sounds very open and yeah, where you're welcome to make mistakes, because I guess it pushes you in the right direction where you know where not to go.
It becomes a little stressful in that he I think all composers have their bag of tricks, and Mike already knows our bag of he knew all of our bag of tricks 2 films ago, so that adds an element of stress that is kind of tough to deal with, but we love it because it forces us to really think outside the box. And similar to like on Ouija, we were leaning into sort of a period score, and Taylor had this great idea to try to use the waterphone to just add some strange textures and sounds, and that was a cool sort of thing that I don't know that we would have tried had we not been trying to outthink our bag of tricks, if that makes sense.
Right, exactly. No, yeah, pushing yourselves in different territories for sure. And so Ouija Origin of Evil is the new film you're doing with Mike, and it's being marketed as a prequel to the 2014 film. But you guys are clearly building your own kind of self-contained story here. That's its own kind of tale, right?
Yeah, Mike and Jeff Howard did a really great job with the story and kind of making it into its own thing, and incorporating some really creepy real life stories into the mix, which play out real nicely. So they made it easy for us to sort of create an atmosphere of fear, because they did it with their storytelling. So it's been great.
And so when you were first kind of approaching this with Mike and sitting down and talking and with Taylor, what were the conversations? I mean, you were aiming for a period score, but were there kind of ideas off the bat, like we want it to be this, how's it going to be different than what we've done in the past, or kind of what were those initial talks about?
The initial talks, we kind of looked at diving into, because we've done several films with Mike. We know that he has myself, Taylor, him, and some of the producers, we have similar films that we love from the past. Some horror films, Poltergeist was one, The Omen was one.
Right.
We started talking about those films and how those films incorporated music into the story. And it was a bit of a challenge, because at first, Mike definitely wanted to keep it in the period, and we were going that way. And some of the notes from the producers were, hey, let's be in the period, but let's not be so dated that we scare, people away with it. So that was a tough line to find. I think early on we really leaned into a lot of 60s style writing. It was very busy in places, but not too busy. We just found that there was we found that horns were not sitting well with anyone. The horns seemed to date the score, so we had to unfortunately murder the horns violently early on in the process. But we ended up in a good place, using a lot of piano, strings, woodwinds, mostly flute, but and then a lot of interesting sounds that we just kind of created with noises from the cello we have in the studio, and the waterphone was a huge part of that. And we took a lot of time playing different pianos to find a piano that wasn't so out of tune that the string players would kill us when we went to the stage. But so that it wasn't just a piano that sounded like it was okay. We wanted to hear the detail of, the piano and the character of it. So I think we ended up in a pretty good place looking into all of that. And then having, through the process, we just found that we just kept recording everything analog that we could to try to maintain a sound that was sort of true to the era. And at the end, we were almost a little nervous because there was a lot of noise on a lot of the recordings we did, but it turned out really nicely. We were very surprised. We were, it was a bit scary leading up because we were kind of crunched towards the end and still making changes with orchestrations on the stage the day of our first recording. So that made it a little stressful, but I think that's what every composer does that. So it's just sort of, getting with the program and making it happen.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, and it was kind of a focus to kind of use instruments of the era, and you also recorded in Nashville in a studio that was built kind of in a restored 100-year-old church. Was that right?
We did, yeah. That's absolutely correct, and that was a lot of fun too. And those players really did an amazing job. The players and the engineers in Nashville were all so on point and played a big role in us getting the sound that we wanted, because the dynamics were equally as important as the notes and the spotting of the music. There are a lot of scenes where little Lulu she's saying something and she's quiet because she's a little girl and you want to stay out of the way, but then that devolves into something pretty horrific at times, and we wanted players who could go from playing something beautiful. We have like a waltz that occurs in the movie several times, and we wanted to go from, hey, we're playing a delicate waltz on the strings, to there's a lot of chaos, everyone's dying, this is really scary. And that's it's tough to do. You can write it down on paper and tell people what to do, but you really need the experience of great players to kind of pull that off, and they did a great job.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, Ouija is in a kind of this genre that's, and we're talking about a genre of horror films that's, filled with so many classics. I mean, you mentioned Poltergeist, and going all the way back to like The Exorcist, and even recently with The Conjuring and stuff, people getting possessed by demons or spirits. And so with your film here, did you guys make a conscious approach to make yours different from that, or did you kind of embrace the genre archetypes and just kind of try to add your spin to it?
Yeah, we kind of embraced the genre and just kind of ran with it. And I think a big part of it that was really helpful was Mike and us being very deliberate about where there was score and where there was not score.
Right.
And there were times where we'd be a little bit unsure, so we'd, hey, let's overplay here. Let's play an extra minute into this scene and see what Mike thinks. And then we'd go in and play it, and Mike would go, I like that, it works, but let's take it out. And we'd take it out, and silence. Everybody knows that silence can be almost more effective than having sounds and music, and that was sort of a delicate line that we danced toward the end, just sort of figuring out where there should and should not be music, and it worked out really well. There's moments where I just watched the film again a few nights ago and with an audience, and there's a scene where we had tons of noise and sounds happening at a certain point, and we decided to take it out. Mike had this great idea to take it out in this section, and it was just wonderful to be in a huge theater and see this scene unfolding and have no music banging you over the head telling you to be scared. It almost worked even better than had you had loads of crazy noise, if that makes any sense.
No, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that must be an amazing feeling to see your kind of creation working on the audience as it's supposed to. That must have been awesome.
It was great. Yeah, it was a great feeling to experience that.
So looking at, I mean, this is not your first horror film or thriller, but in your opinion, now you've done a few, including with Mike, based on the techniques you've done and the work in the horror genre, what is, in your words, what is the role of music in a horror film? What is just a basic role for it? Is it to scare people? Is it to add tension? What is kind of your take on it?
I think it does add tension. I think I was always even when I was really young. I mean, I had a paper route when I was really young, and I used to come home and watch horror movies and sci-fi movies when I was in 7th and 8th grade. And it was interesting at that time playing classical music at that age and watching these films and seeing that, music can create so much tension, but the other thing that it can do is it creates such a nice, it gives you a nice opportunity to tell a story emotionally about people within the context of a horror film who are about to either be brutally killed or hopefully. But I think that's and that's really the great thing about Ouija, is that Mike and Jeff did a great job of leaning into telling a story about this family so that you really get invested into the characters, so that when things start to happen to them, you're not only scared by the idea of it, but you feel, bad's the wrong word, but you have sort of a connection to them where you don't want things to go wrong.
Right.
Does that make sense?
You want them to survive. You want them to get out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sort of what we've really tried to find in the horror and thriller films that we've done. We try to find that emotional connection that draws people into why do you care that this person is going to have a terrible go for the next 90 minutes?
Right.
Because if you don't care that somebody's going to die, then it just becomes, how many cans of blood can you pour on the screen?
Right.
But having like the nice story of a character and being drawn into them makes you feel more about them when they become possessed or crazy or kill someone or get killed or
right.
whatever happens.
Absolutely. And to wrap up, and in the spirit of Halloween, I would like to ask if you could score, and we mentioned some classic horror films, but if you could score any classic horror movie or horror villain or monster, which one would you pick?
Oh, that's an amazing question. Oh, that's so hard to,
And you got to pretend like the originals don't exist. The original themes, all those classic ones, just try to take them out of your head and imagine just the character in its essence or the movie in its essence. What would really like a playground you'd love to play in?
The place that I would never want to redo anything that was done, but if I had gun at the head, I would love to. The Exorcist for me is that movie is terrifying, and I love the playground that they've set up with that movie and how it's just so creepy. I don't know what I would do, but if you're asking for a film canvas, if I had my choice,
exactly, yeah.
I would choose that for sure because it's just so. It's so disturbing on so many levels.
It's one of my favorite horror films, and I'm actually from the East Coast and in Maryland, and I would always go to the staircase in Georgetown. It's by a gas station now, but it's there still, and it's cool to go and visit that site.
I just got chills just now when you brought that up because it's still to this day that movie is terrifying to me, and but it was so well done. Oh, that's
a great. It's also I just if you have a chance, go to Halloween Horror Nights. They have a pretty cool maze. It's the Exorcist maze, and it was my favorite there. So.
That's what I've heard. I heard it's pretty awesome.
It's great.
I need to go check that out.
Yeah, definitely worth it. It was out of all of the mazes, it was my favorite. Like it somehow managed to recreate the story. You kept going in a loop through the room, and things were changing. And I was like, oh my god, it's like a structure. And it wasn't just like a scare maze. And I was like, this is amazing. But Andy, I just want to thank you again for your time tonight and for chatting. And it was so much fun, and you had so much insight. And I just want to congrats on the film. It's getting great reviews. I mean, way better than the last one. I mean, you guys really did a good job. So.
No, that's great to hear, Kai. I really appreciate it.